What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Savage Rounds with Xavier. This is episode 17. Today, I've got the UFC Fight Night, Vettori versus Cannonier breakdown, and betting talk for you guys. I will get right into it. We kick the card off, starting the night with a light heavyweight prelim, Zach Pauga, Modestas Bukauskas. Pauga is 7-1, 6'2", 76-inch reach, 35 years old. 4-1 in his last 5, 1-1 on the Ultimate Fighter, and 1-0 in the UFC. He beat Jordan Wright by unanimous decision in his last fight, which is that one win in the UFC. It was in February of this year. On the Bukauskas side, he is 14-5, a little bit taller at 6'3", got a 78-inch reach, 29 years old. 3-2 in his last 5, 1-2 in the UFC, and his last fight was a unanimous decision victory over Tyson Pedro, also in February of this year. So both of these guys have been pretty active recently, and I like that for both of them. Bukauskas getting his second shot in the UFC after a not-so-successful first run, ending with his knee getting destroyed by Khalil Roundtree. It was pretty gross. In this one, though, I'd say Bukauskas is the better overall mixed martial artist. I think in the striking, he's probably at quite a bit of a higher level. And then in the other facets of the game, he's still well-rounded, maybe not as good in the other spots, but where Pauga will have success in this fight is with his volume and using his size and strength. Obviously, he's not a taller guy than Bukauskas, but he's just a big guy in general. So using his size and strength to hold Bukauskas up against the cage, make it slow. We saw that in the Jordan Wright fight. Jordan Wright just could not get off of the cage, and Pauga won it, throwing little tiny shots to stay active, I guess, so the ref wouldn't back him off, and he just had so much control time up against the fence in that fight. And I think that's what he's going to have to do to get the win here. But Bukauskas, I think he's just at a much higher level than anyone Pauga's fought so far. Cage Warriors champion, had that UFC stint already, left, won Cage Warriors again, won the belt again, and now he's back. Successful first fight. I think the movement for him is going to be big in this one. He likes to bounce around the outside, doesn't have too much volume coming back at Pauga, but when he lands big shots, he makes them count. He's got a lot of power in his backhand, and I think kind of baiting Pauga not backing, but like rounding the cage, kind of baiting Pauga into that big shot is what he's going to need on the feet. He'll definitely be able to hit Pauga. He's a pretty hittable fighter. His defense isn't the great unless he's got you up against the cage, obviously. A lot of good kicks coming from Bukauskas as well. I really do think movement is going to be big for him here. I think he's going to be able to skirt the outside, stay away from Pauga. He'll probably have trouble with that movement. And I think Bukauskas is just too good to be held up against the fence for really, really extended periods of time. It is a close fight. I do think the odds are closer than it suggests. I'm going with Bukauskas. My only worry is that the physicality is just so much more on Pauga's side that he is able to hold him up against the fence. I do think, though, just the level of fighter that Bukauskas is at, he'll be able to get off the fence and do good work on the feet, because, like I said, I think he has the bigger striking advantage here. There's probably not a bet I'm going to take here. Just one I have noted down is the over 2.5 at -175. I do think Bukauskas could land the big knockout shot, but I feel like this one probably does go over regardless of who wins, whether it's Pauga with the cage control time or Bukauskas with the striking. I feel like it does go over. I probably won't be taking that bet, but just something I thought was the only my safest bet for this fight, I'd say. Moving on up, bantamweight prelim, Dan Argueta versus Ronnie Lawrence. Argueta is 9-1, 5'7", 68-inch reach, 29 years old, 4-1 in the UFC, 4-1 in his last 5, 1-1 in the UFC. His last fight being a unanimous decision victory over Nick Aguirre in January of this year. Ronnie Lawrence on the other side, 8-2, 5'8", 68.5-inch reach, 31 years old, also 4-1 in his last 5, with a win on Contender Series, and he's 2-1 in the UFC. His last fight was a unanimous decision loss versus Said Yakub Kakrakhmanov. That was quite a while ago. It was in July of 2022, so he took quite some time off. Not quite a year, but almost. I really do just think Ronnie Lawrence is the better fighter here. I think Argueda's going to need... we all know Argueda's a really good wrestler. I won't say really good, but a good wrestler. And I think in this fight, he's going to need control time to win this, which he is capable of. But I feel like this is a step up in competition for him, quite a big step up from Aguirre. And I feel like Ronnie Lawrence will be able to get out of control positions that Argueda has him in, make scrambles happen, be able to get out of those scrambles. And then on the feet, I think Ronnie Lawrence is the much better striker here. So he'll be able to tag up Argueda, mix in takedowns of his own. We know he's a good wrestler. I really like him in this fight. I do think he gets the victory. Betting here, I like I said, I really do think this is probably one of my more confident picks of the night. I think Ronnie Lawrence moneyline, minus 180. If he had gotten in earlier, definitely would have been better. But this is being recorded on Wednesday, so these are just the odds at the moment. But I do think he wins this. Ronnie Lawrence minus 180, I think, could be good in like a little 2-team parlay, maybe the Savage Rounds parlay, which we'll see later. And then I do think Ronnie Lawrence wins this fight by decision. That line is at plus 130 right now if you're on the Ronnie Lawrence side as well. So those are some lines to think about. Moving on up, women's flyweight bout, Teresa Bleda, Gabriella Fernandes. Bleda is 6-1. I do not have the right height for her. It just says 5 foot. She is not 5 foot. I can't remember off the top of my head what her actual height is. I do believe she'll be the taller fighter in this matchup. 71-inch reach. Hold on, I can pull it up real quick. She is 5'9". Okay. So 5'9", 71-inch reach, 21 years old, 4-1 in her last 5. A win on Contender Series and 0-1 in the UFC. That loss in the UFC was her last fight, a round 2 KO TKO loss versus Natalia Silva in November of last year. Gabriella Fernandes, 8-2, 5'6", 66-inch reach, 29 years old, 4-1 in her last 5, 0-1 in the UFC. That 0-1 also being her last fight, a unanimous decision loss versus Jasmine Jasdavicius in February of this year, who we just saw come off of a good performance against Miranda Maverick and get the win. But for Bleda, we saw her have a competitive first round versus Natalia Silva, and then her cardio gave up on her hard. You could see she slowed down in the second, and it was just all downhill from there. Once her gas tank went, she really had nothing left. In this fight, though, she's not facing somebody that will give her as much of a problem with the takedowns, because that's what Teresa Bleda is going to go for here. She's a grappler. Her striking is a little, I don't know how to describe it. I want to say like new, but that's not the word. It's basic. Her head movement's not very good. It's a 1-2. She's very hittable. Her striking isn't the best. Her grappling is definitely the big part of her game here. She's got decent power in hands because she's a big girl, strong girl too. But the grappling is where she'll want to take this fight, especially against Gabriella Fernandes. And we saw against Jasdavicius, Gabriella Fernandes was getting taken down and held down. I think Teresa Bleda can do the same here. It won't be the situation of... obviously, Gabriella Fernandes could use jiu-jitsu, and we saw Jasdavicius be able to sweep off the bottom to get out of the bottom of Bleda. Gabriella Fernandes may have that in her locker with the jiu-jitsu, so if she's able to get some of those off and make Teresa Bleda work, the gas tank may start to wear. But I think when it's on the feet, she's going to strike to clinch, use her size up against the fence, the cage, and then drag Gabriella Fernandes down, or just shoot takedowns and drag Gabriella Fernandes down. I don't think it'll be standing for very long. I don't think Fernandes will pose too much defense in the takedown defense department. So I think Bleda gets those. She's able to hold positions. Again, this is a really close one. I think the odds should be much closer than this. Minus 250 for Blade is kind of crazy. I'll be staying away betting wise, just because I do think this fight is much closer than that. I saw some people talking about Gabriella Fernandes KO lines, which if you think she'll be able to get up or defend takedowns, or you think Blade is going to gas late, Fernandes could be live for that finish. She's a good striker, but I'm going with Blade on this one. Moving on, Zhalgas Zhumagulov, Felipe Bunes. Zhumagulov is 14-8, 5'4", 66.5-inch reach, 34 years old, 1-4 in his last 5, with some tough fights and some questionable decisions in there. His last fight, a split decision loss versus Charles Johnson in November of last year. One of those questionable decisions for sure. Felipe Bunes, 13-6, 5'7", 71-inch reach, 33 years old, 3-2 in his last 5, with a round 1 KO TKO. It's supposed to be a slash, not a question mark. Victory versus Yuma Horiyuchi. And that was to win the LFA belt in January of this year. So I've seen people talking about this on Twitter about his record. In his last 7, he's 3-4, and so people are talking about the losses. But if you actually look at the dates and break it down, he was 0-3 right before the pandemic on a 3-fight skid, all decision losses. There's no fights for COVID, so it's about a year and a half until his next fight in 2021. And then he goes 3-1 over that course, winning the LFA belt in his most recent fight. And a fight or two before that, one of the 3 other fights he lost, but it was to Jussier Formiga, a previous UFC fighter who that would probably be his highest level of competition. But so he's on a 3-1 run right now, winning the LFA belt. I think on the feet, he's much more dangerous than Zhumagulov. Zhumagulov can put out volume and good pressure just because he's such a pressure fighter. He strikes to clinch to try and drag you down. So he has a decent bit of volume and good pressure with the striking, but it's nothing too dangerous. I think Felipe Bunes on the feet will be the much more dangerous fighter. He'll be able to tag Zhumagulov, and I think he himself is good enough on the ground to not be held down, to be able to make it a little risky down there for Zhumagulov, create scrambling situations and get up. And I think, like I said, on the feet, he'll punish Zhumagulov. Maybe find the finish, maybe not. Gassing for Bunes could be an issue come late because of the pressure of Zhumagulov and it being Bunes' first UFC fight, the nerves. You never know how that is going to turn out. But skill for skill, I like Bunes here. I think he gets the victory. Bet-wise, really the only thing I'm looking at, just because I may play a little shot on Bunes' money line. Right now it's sitting at plus 145. I've seen a few people take it. I may end up taking a little shot on it. I'm not sure yet. Check Twitter for that before the fights for the full betting card. But this is going to be more for me kind of seeing Bunes against a higher level of competition than he normally fights over at LFA. Not saying that the guys he wasn't fighting were great or good, but this is definitely a higher level. So it'll be interesting to see how he does, see if this is his level or not. But if you're big on Bunes and you like that, the underdog spot, I really don't mind it. I do think he gets the win here. Moving on up, we've got Carlos Hernandez versus Dennis Bondar. Hernandez is 8-2, 5'8", 67-inch reach, 29 years old, 4-1 in his last 5, with a win on Contender Series, and he's 1-1 in the UFC. His last fight being a round 1 submission loss versus Alan Nascimento. That was in January of this year. On the Bondar side, he is 16-4, 5'6", 69-inch reach, 30 years old, 4-1 in his last 5, and 0-1 in the UFC, with his last fight being that UFC loss, a round 1 KO TKO loss versus Malcolm Gordon in February of last year, February 2022. So it's been quite a while for him, a year and a few months now since his last fight. I do believe he got injured in that fight. I think he had an elbow injury. and he wasn't able to continue versus Malcolm Gordon. But he did get rocked or hurt early by Gordon, I do believe. In this fight, we all know what Bondar's going to do. He's going to throw wild shots and strike to close it, to get the takedown, to clinch up, clinch up or get the takedown. On the ground is where he's going to want this fight. Carlos Hernandez is a good boxer, not very dangerous with his hands. I don't think, let me pull it up just to make sure I'm not saying random things, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't have a KO TKO finish. Yeah, he's never been KO'd or TKO'd, but he doesn't have one either. 4 submissions coming from him. I think the pressure from Bondar, the top control, it'll nullify Hernandez's jiu-jitsu from the bottom. I do worry a little bit about Bondar gassing. That may be an issue late into this fight if Hernandez is able to shuck off some takedowns and start to work his boxing. But I do think Bondar will be able to land some wilder shots to get in close and get the takedowns and get the clinch. Do some good ground and pound work and get the win here. I do like Dennis Bondar to get the win in this one. Bet-wise, I don't mind taking Bondar minus 130. The under 2.5 at plus 145. I don't mind either. Bondar is definitely a kill or be killed fighter. All his fights are finishes. Obviously, I don't think he's ever. Oh no, yeah, he was finished in his last fight, so obviously has been finished. He's kill or be killed. And he does have the issue of he may gas late, so we never know. Hernandez could find the finish, and Bondar's going to be crazy on the ground. So the under 2.5 at plus 145 doesn't sound too bad to me. I haven't locked anything in there yet. But yeah, Bondar to win this one for me. Next up, we've got Kyung Ho Kong versus Cristian Quinonez. Kong is 18'9", 5'9", 73-inch reach, 35 years old, 4-1 in his last 5. His last fight being a unanimous decision victory over Gabriella Fernandes. That was in June of last year. And Quinonez is 18-3, 5'8", 70-inch reach, 27 years old, 5-0 in his last 5 with a win on Contender Series, and he's 1-0 in the UFC. That one UFC fight being his last, a round 1 KO TKO win versus Khalid Taha in September of last year. This one, so they're very different strikers. Kong is he's the more technical fighter. His style is more technical. He likes to mix in nice leg kicks, and he does have good wrestling as well. He hasn't really used it in these past 2 fights. 2 fights ago was against Ronnie, so obviously you're probably not going to use your wrestling there. But then he gets the victory versus Duncan in his last fight. Didn't really break out the wrestling there against a striker, a dangerous striker. He gets the win anyway, but maybe he's kind of going away from that wrestling later in his career. He is 35, so you do wonder if that affects his gas tank a little bit more than it used to. Quinonez, very flowy, slick striker. You get hit with shots from odd angles. He's got pretty good power. We saw the shot come over the top versus Taha and put him down. Good power in that right hand, and he's got some awkward movement where Gabriella Fernandes kind of stood in front of Kong and was just there to be hit. Quinonez has got that kind of different movement you don't usually see, mixed in with those odd angle punches. Good jiu-jitsu. If Kong does mix in those takedowns, I think he'll be able to use the jiu-jitsu just to threaten with it to get up, maybe find a submission, maybe not, but at the very least threaten using the jiu-jitsu to get up. So I don't think he will be held down very long. And just at this point in their careers, I like him on the feet a bit more. I'm going with Quinonez here. I don't have any bets for this one. I don't mind the Quinonez money line. This is a very close fight, and it'll definitely be Quinonez's hardest challenge so far. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. I probably won't bet this one, but I do like Quinonez to get the win. Next up, Jimmy the Brick Flick versus Alessandro Costa. Flick is 16-6, 5'7", 68-inch reach, 32 years old, 4-1 in his last 5 with a Contender Series win, and he's 1-1 in the UFC. His last fight being a round 1 KO TKO loss versus Charles Johnson in January of this year. Alessandro Costa, 12-3, 5'4", 67-inch reach, 27 years old, 4-1 in his last 5, also with a Contender Series victory, and he's 0-1 in the UFC. His last fight being a round 3 KO TKO loss versus Amir Albazi in December of last year. So coming off Contender Series, he got thrown to the Wolves. I think it was a short notice replacement where he jumped on that opportunity to fight Albazi. Didn't go his way. He got hurt late. I think he started to slow down, kind of gassed out. But short notice, he did his best. It was decent work for getting thrown in against such a good guy on short notice. But in this fight, he's only had one fight since his little fake retirement where he retired for a little bit and came back. He did not look good versus Charles Johnson. He didn't look like he was ready for a fight at all, to be honest. He was saying sorry around the ring afterwards to Dana and his opponent and stuff. I think on the feet, Jimmy Flick isn't very good, and I think Costa will be able to hurt him there. Costa, a good jiu-jitsu player himself, so on the ground. Obviously, you don't want to be on the ground with Jimmy Flick because how awkward he is and the crazy submissions he can throw up and how talented he is himself. But I think Costa, at the very least, will be able to handle himself and get out of some positions, get back to the striking where I think he will have the advantage, definitely in the power. I think he'll be able to hurt Jimmy Flick on the feet here. I do like him to get this win. Under 2.5, sitting at -210. I think if Jimmy Flick gets the win, it'll have to be some crazy submission, and I really do think Costa finds either ground and pound from the top after he hurts him or just hurts him with a few shots on the feet. So I do like that under 2.5 there. And then Costa KO TKO sitting at +120. I probably won't take a shot at it, but I just wrote it down because I do think Costa finds the finish here. I like him in this one. So going with Costa there. Next up, last prelim of the night, Ioni Barcelos, Miles Johns. Barcelos 17-4, 5'7", 67-inch reach, 36 years old, 2-3 in his last 5. His last fight being a round 1 KO TKO loss versus Umar Nurmagomedov in January of this year. And Miles Johns 13-2, 5'7", 66-inch reach, 29 years old, 3-2 in his last 5. His last fight being a unanimous decision victory over Vince Morales in November of last year. Overall, this was a weird one for me because everything tells you to pick Ioni Barcelos. He's the better mixed martial artist in general, I'd say probably everywhere. Maybe, even though he's got decent power himself, maybe only behind in the power department on the feet, but the way in which he got knocked out in his last fight kind of scares me. He's 36 years old, older into his career. Gets knocked out one punch, one shot by Umar Nurmagomedov, who only had one other finish, TKO KO in his life before that in the pros, and I'd be pretty certain in my mind and say, I didn't check, but it was his third fight in his career, so I didn't take a look at the fight, but I'd be pretty confident in saying it wasn't a one-punch knockout. It was probably him on the ground overwhelming the guy. But yeah, he gets the one-punch knockout versus Barcelos. He was out cold for a while, and that just scares me. You never want to see that with a fighter getting old, where the chin just goes randomly all of a sudden. Wasn't eating big shots before that and just gets cracked once by someone who's not typically doing that to people. And you come in, Miles Johns, his last 2 wins are KOs in the 3rd round. He's got big power in his hands. Not too many knockouts overall in his career, but I think he's got 5 or 6. Definitely these last 2 fights definitely his last 2 wins, feeling a little more confident in the power. Late in, it's carrying. He's feeling confident in it late into the 3rd, and he's getting finishes there. So we know he's got the power to find those finishes. It just scares me a little bit with Barcelos' chin. Like I said, everything tells me pick Barcelos just because he is the better fighter. But also something's telling me not to pick him because of his chin. and that's just the side I'm leaning right now. I think Miles Johns will land a big shot at some point and hurt Barcelos and put him down. Betting for this one is weird just because of that feeling. Like, typically, if this fight, I wasn't worried about Barcelos getting chinned and going to sleep, I'd probably be confident in saying he wins a decision here. So, I have the under 2.5 written down, but I feel like for this fight, if Barcelos wasn't prone to getting hurt, I wouldn't have that. And with it just being a one-off last time, or with the possibility of it being a one-off, maybe his chin is fine. Usman really just did hit the shot, or hit the spot, who knows. So that does scare me a little bit here betting-wise. I'm probably going to stay away, but just written down, I have the under 2.5 at plus 140, under 1.5 even at plus 220, Miles Johns money line plus 181, and maybe the only one I'll put a little sprinkle on just because Miles Johns KO TKO plus 500. Maybe I'll just put a little bit on that and then sit back and watch because I'm so conflicted here. But yeah, I'm going to go just with my pick. I'm going to go with Miles Johns. Just the chin of Barcelos scares me. He's better overall as a fighter. So yeah, if the chin holds up, he should win. But I'm going with Miles Johns. Next up, first fight on the main card, Nicholas Dalby, Muslim Salikhov. This one is another real close fight. I'll read off the stats first. I forgot to say that. Dalby, 21, 4-1, 5'11", 74.5-inch reach, 38 years old, 3-1-1 in his last 5, with his last fight being a split decision victory over Warley Alves in January of this year. And Salikhov is 19-3, also 5'11", 70-inch reach, 39 years old, 4-1 in his last 5, with his last fight being a round 3 KO TKO win over Andre Fili in November of last year. So what I was going to say with this one, I do think this is another pretty close fight on the feet. I think Dalby could use his in-and-out bounciness, land a lot of volume. I don't think he has... Obviously, he was hurting Warley Alves, but I'm not sure at this point if Warley Alves' chin... really. I guess you could say the same for Salikhov at 39. He got knocked out by the leech. Maybe the chin doesn't hold up as well as it used to at 39. But I think Dalby feels in this situation more of the volume kickboxer. He'll be jumping in and out, throwing kicks, throwing his 1-2. I think it's, like I said, close on the feet. Muslim Salikhov being the more dangerous striker, I'd say, overall. He's obviously, we've seen it, he's got the wild spinning kicks, he's got decent power in his hands, he throws really nice combinations on the feet, and the edge I'm going with here, other than, I do think if this was just a striking battle, I'd go with Salikhov anyway. I think he's just a little bit better, and the power is better, his striking feels more dangerous to me, so I'd edge him there, but also, the capability of mixing in the takedowns into this fight will have Dalby thinking, opening up the striking, or if he doesn't take it into consideration, Salikhov may be able to get some control time on the ground, work some ground and pound. You never know. So I do edge Salikhov in this fight. I like him to get the win. Use his striking, land some good combinations, land some kicks, work in the wrestling, maybe use the gate, get some control time, that kind of deal. No bets on this one from me. I don't mind the minus 182 taking the money line for Salikhov. I really do think he wins this fight. I think he's better, but like I said, it's close. The volume from Dalby could prevail here, so I'm personally going to stay away betting wise, but I do like Salikhov to get the win here. Next up, an absolute banger, fight of the night potential, Manuel Torres, Nicolas Mata. Torres is 13-2, 5'10", 73-inch reach, 28 years old, 4-1 in his last 5, with a win on Contender Series, and he's 1-0 in the UFC. His last fight being that win in the UFC, a round 1 KO TKO victory versus Frank Camacho in May of last year. And Mata on the other side, 13-4, 5'9", 70-inch reach, 30 years old, 4-1 in his last 5, also a Contender Series victory, and he's 1-1 in the UFC. His last fight, a round 1 KO TKO victory versus Cameron Van Camp in September of last year, so fought a little bit more recently than Manuel Torres. I do think Torres had a fight booked, but it ended up falling out not too long ago. So now they're here, they fight each other. This is going to be a banger, like I said. Both dudes have great power in the hand. They're both great power in their hands. They're both really fun strikers to watch. A little bit different styles. Manuel Torres is going to be a bit more wild and reckless. He throws big hooks. Like I said, he has big power. And my issue with him, so I've gone back and forth on this one all week. My initial thought was Torres, just because he's a bit of the bigger guy, got the longer reach, and like I said, his power is crazy. He looked pretty good in the Frank Camacho fight, but he was getting hit quite a bit, so he's a hittable guy as well, especially by Frank Camacho. He leaves his chin out there to be hit while he's throwing these big combinations with big power winging shots. Nicholas Mata, I think, keeps it a little bit tighter. He throws good counter shots. He's got a really nice left hook. We saw it against Cameron Van Camp. He caught him with that, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Gets the knockout victory in the first round. I can kind of see a similar situation here. Manuel Torres coming in, throwing big shots. Nicholas Mata throwing like a nice, tight, sharp left hook. And he's got big power in his hands as well. A bit more technical on the feet. I'd say that's more his striking style, is the technical. I started out Torres slowly as the week has gone on, and I've thought about it and continued to watch tape. And I'm going with Mata here. I do like him to find that counter shot, the big counter shot. A little bit less reckless, I'd say, on the feet. I really do think. I do think he'll be able to find the counter shot. Regardless, though, for betting purposes, I do think one of these guys gets knocked out. We've seen Nicholas Mata get hurt and dropped it before. His UFC loss was against Jim Miller, who cracked him and knocked him out. And obviously Manuel Torres has that power, so if he connects with a good shot, it is definitely a possibility. The under 1.5 at -160. Under 1.5 is always risky, but I really do think this fight ends in the first round. There's a possibility of it going past, but I don't think we see it go past the first. And like I said, I'm on the Mata side here. Mata money line -155. His KO at +200. I have a hard time seeing this one going to decision, so I feel like the KO is a solid line to take here. If you're on the same side if you're on the Torres side as well. Obviously, these guys could go out there and both their chins could hold up and they could have some crazy slugfest war where it goes the distance. But I have a hard time seeing that. I think one of them goes out. I'm on the Mata side. I like him going forward. Next up, Pat Sabatini, Lucas Almeida, another one that, because of the fight style of Almeida, I think we could see some crazy fight of the night style fight. Typically Pat Sabatini doesn't bring that, but Almeida could drag him into one. Sabatini, 17-4, 5'8", 70-inch reach, 32 years old, 4-1 in his last 5. His last fight being a round 1 KO TKO loss versus Dane Jackson in September of last year. Almeida, 14-1, 5'11", 71-inch reach, 32 years old, 4-1 in his last 5. He lost on Contender Series, but got a shot in the UFC a little bit later down the road. He's 1-0 in the UFC now after his last fight, a round 3 KO TKO victory versus Mike Trizano in June of last year. So just about a year since his debut. I like Lucas Almeida in this one. I've picked a few underdogs here. I'm doing it again. I've picked a few underdogs on the card. I'm doing it again with this fight. I think on the ground, Almeida's jiu-jitsu is good enough and dangerous enough. Not dangerous enough. Good enough. He's good enough at jiu-jitsu to be able to, if he gets dragged down, and Pat Sabatini's able to grab some control time where he'll be able to keep himself out of danger of the submission. Obviously, Sabatini, very talented, could find it, but I lean the thinking of he'll be able to get out of spots on the ground or at least stay safe. And on the feet, I believe he can punish Pat Sabatini pretty bad. Sabatini likes to strike sometimes, and it's not the best striking. It feels slow. He kind of leaves it out there. His chin's there to be hit, and I think we saw Dane Jackson put him out pretty bad last time. I think Lucas Almeida can do the same thing. We saw him finish Trizano in the third. I think if he touches Sabatini's chin early, he can do some pretty big damage. He's got really nice Muay Thai striking, with pretty solid power as well. And like I said, I believe he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I favor him in this fight. Betting wise, I forgot to write down the under, but I don't have it here, so I can't really see what it is. But Almeida plus 177 is the line right now. I like that. And then I may even take a little sprinkle on Almeida KO TKO plus 265. I really do think he'll be able to hurt Sabatini on the feet at some point in this fight and find the finish that way. Next up, another close fight, another one that could be a really fun kickboxing match. Armen Petrosyan, Cristian Leroy Duncan. Petrosyan is 8-2, 6'3", 71-inch reach, 32 years old, 4-1 in his last 5, a win on Contender Series, 2-1 in the UFC. His last fight being a unanimous decision victory over AJ Dobson in October of last year. And on the Duncan side, he's undefeated, 8-0, 6'2", 79-inch reach, 27 years old, 5-0. Obviously, he's undefeated, 1-0 in the UFC. And his last fight was a round 1 KO TKO victory over Dusko Todorovic in March of this year. It ended up being they didn't even really get to do too much fighting. It was kind of a slow feeling out process, and then Todorovic's knee got put in some weird position. He took like a weird step in it, and it gave out on him. It wasn't really it was an unfortunate situation, so we didn't really get to see Duncan really get his debut just because Todorovic, it was some weird freak injury. But in this fight, I think Petrosyan is the more steady, like technical kickboxer. You'll be able to find good combinations out of him. It's really, like I said, crispy, technical. He throws a lot of good leg kicks, puts out pretty solid volume. And on the other side, Duncan, he's a little bit, kind of like what I said for Quinonez, a little bit more flowy, bouncy. Strikes come from different angles. He throws really fast combinations, spinning body kicks, throws a kick to the leg. I like Duncan in this fight. I think the movement can cause some issues for Petrosyan. I think I'll have trouble finding Duncan as Duncan kind of bounces and moves in and out and moves around the cage. And I think Duncan will be able to tag him and move him. Tag him and move. Whether he finds the finish or not, I'm not too sure. Because really, we've yet to see him have a fight in the UFC, a real fight. I do think he would have beaten Dusko in the end, but he gets a step up in competition, so we'll get to see what level he's at here. I do like I said, I like Cristian Leroy Duncan in this one. Betting wise, the only thing I have written down is the money line, just because there's still questions to be answered about Duncan in the UFC, so we'll see what problems Petrosyan can pose to him, see if he can solve the issues. But I do believe the movement and the awkward, bouncy striking from Duncan will get him this win. Next up, co-main event. We have Joaquim Silva stepping into this fight against Armen Tsarukyan. I'll read the stats real quick. I don't have too much to say about this one. I think this will be a mauling for Tsarukyan. But Tsarukyan, 19-3, 5'7", 72.5-inch reach, 26 years old, 4-1 in his last 5. His last fight being a unanimous decision victory over Damir Ismagulov in December of last year. Joaquim Silva, 12-4, 5'8", 69-inch reach, 34 years old, 2-3 in his last 5. His last fight being a round 2 KO TKO victory over Jesse Ronson in October of last year. This fight, obviously you can just tell from Silva's last opponent, Jesse Ronson, this is just a crazy difference in level that he typically fights at, Joaquim Silva. I think he's getting thrown into the deep end here. They needed someone for this fight, so Silva was the guy that was willing to take it. We've seen Silva's chin not hold up. I really think Armen can do whatever he wants here. If he wants to go out, shoot a takedown, and drag Silva down, and land big ground and pound elbows like he did to Joe Alvarez, slice him up that way, finish him there. I think if he wants to go out, and we saw him knock out Yagos, or drop Yagos and then finish him, but on the feet, I think if he wants to, he can go out there and throw big shots and land on Joaquim Silva and put him out that way. regardless, I think Sorokin gets this one done relatively quick. The under 1.5 minus 150. I do think this fight will be over before then. The Sorokin KO minus 125. If you're super, super confident in the KO, minus 120. I really do think it's gonna happen. I still have trouble taking a KO line at minus 125. That always scares me. But I probably won't be touching this fight unless I'm taking the under 1.5. I may end up taking a little shot on that with some other unders or overs. I typically end up doing a little parlay with one or two, maybe three under overs. So I may take a shot at that, but I probably won't touch the KO line, and obviously the money line at minus 1,000. No point. But Sorokin gets this victory via however he wants. Main event of the night, Marvin Vettori, Jared Cannonier. There's a log-jammed middleweight division. I'm just trying to figure out what's next for Izzy. If Drickus can't beat Rob, then we've got a trilogy in which Israel will likely be the victory, or be the victor of all three fights. If Vettori keeps winning, there's another trilogy where Adesanya's likely to be the winner of all three fights. He's already fought Cannonier. It feels weird up at the top of this division. Who knows what's next, but we get this fight. These guys feel like the only guys that haven't fought each other. Vettori is 19-6-1, 6 feet tall, 74-inch reach, 29 years old, 3-2 in his last five. Last fight being a unanimous decision victory over Roman Dolidze in March of this year. I didn't think that was as controversial of a decision as people made it out to be. I thought Marvin won that fight pretty easily, in my opinion. Obviously the rounds were close, and Marvin even lost a round, but I thought the two he won, he won, and you could tell. So I was surprised. Obviously it was a close fight, but I was surprised as many people thought Dolidze won that as they did. But on the Cannonier side, he's 16-6, 5'11", 77.5-inch reach, 39 years old, 3-2 in his last five. His last fight being a split decision victory over Sean Strickland in December of last year. Another controversial decision there. I thought Cannonier won. A lot of people thought Strickland won. I didn't really go back and rewatch that fight, so I can't give you a second opinion of mine on it. But the first watch, I thought Cannonier won. It was a very close fight, though. In this one, I really have a hard time seeing how Cannonier could win this. Obviously, he's got crazy power, and he could put anyone out, but Marvin Vettori is a hard ask to put out. I don't know if I've ever seen him even dazed by a shot, let alone wobbled or hurt by a shot. Dude's got, his chin is just attached to his shoulders. There's no neck, so there's nothing to hurt. And volume I see being an issue against a guy like Marvin Vettori for him. I think Marvin Vettori is going to plot forward, throw his little combinations, his hooks, his 1-2s, put out a lot of volume, stay on the front foot, throw off a little barrage of strikes and rush into a clinch, hold him up against the cage, maybe try and work a takedown, but definitely clinch up against the cage, get some control time there, break out back to the striking, kind of rinse and repeat that deal. And I think Vettori will do that to a victory. I don't see a finish for either guy here. But yeah, like I said, I feel obviously Cannonier was able to keep it close with a volume guy like Strickland, but and even get the win, which some people thought was controversial. So I don't really know. I thought Cannonier won, like I said, but this one, just at 39 years old, Vettori still in his prime, or even coming into his prime. I think Vettori will be able to outwork Cannonier here. Control time up against defense, lots of volume, always moving forward, being aggressive. I like Vettori in this one. Betting wise, like I said, hard time seeing either one of these guys find a finish. So over 4.5 minus 200. Minus 200 for over 4.5 does seem crazy, but in a Vettori fight, I feel like it's a realistic one. And then Vettori decision also I feel like is a good one, plus 140. I have a hard time I feel like I've said this like 3 times, but I have a hard time seeing a finish for either guy, let alone Marvin Vettori. If one of them's going to get a finish, it's probably Cannonier with some crazy big shot that cracks Vettori's chin for the first time. Vettori doesn't really have that finishing prowess, but yeah, Vettori decision plus 140 seems nice. Also, if you just want to rock the money line, I think that's fine too, minus 112. Good line if you're feeling as good about Vettori as I am. But yeah, that's all. That'll be my pick, Vettori, for this one. Moving on to the Savage Rounds parlay, I really meant to look in my little notebook and see how many weeks in a row it is of victory. I keep forgetting to check. I think overall the record's 9-7 now. We're on a good 4 or 5 in a row. Definitely 5-1 in our last 6. We're on a pretty good run here. This one, last week's, God, I wish I could remember off the top of my head. Last week's got cut down to 1 leg, I believe, so the profit wasn't as great, but the 1 leg did end up hitting. I can't even remember. No, it wasn't. It was 2. The week before was the one that got cut down to 1 leg. This past week, both legs hit. No, I don't even remember. I'm all over the place. I think it was Nasruddin Imavov, and that fight did get called, so it was cut down to 1 leg. But regardless, for this one, first leg, I'm going Ronnie Lawrence minus 180. Like I said, I think he'll be much better than Argueta on the feet. He's great on the ground. He can create his own scrambles. I don't think Argueta will be able to hold him down, create scrambles, get back up, mix in takedowns of his own while they're striking. I like Ronnie Lawrence a lot in that one. And my second leg of the Savage Rounds parlay, to keep it going, I'm going Alessandro Costa. I really don't like when fighters come back from retirements, especially with how bad Jimmy Flick looked in that last fight against Charles Johnson. I really think Alessandro Costa will be able to hurt him on the feet, and unless Jimmy Flick throws up some crazy flying triangle type submission. Honestly, Jimmy Flick's dangerous on the ground, but I feel like I'll have a hard time getting Costa there into advantageous positions for himself. I think Costa hurts him on the feet and gets the fight done. I like these 2 guys for the Savage Rounds parlay, Ronnie Lawrence, Alessandro Costa. Parlay it, get plus 118. Not bad for a little parlay. Hopefully we can keep the run going. But yeah, that'll be all. UFC Fight Night, Vettori versus Cannonier this Saturday. And tomorrow will be Friday, because this video is coming out Thursday. So Friday I will have the matchmaking video for last week. I'll be doing matchups for Steve Erceg, Nate Landwehr, Ige, Malat, Dariush, Aldana, Oliveira. And yeah, I'll have that out tomorrow. Other than that, I'll see you guys next week for the card review for this one, and then matchups for that. Yeah, peace out.